Chapter 10 Break for Freedom. Thad was sure he would get no sleep that night, though he knew he needed the rest. But he was still young and he was tired. Less than a minute after he had wrapped himself in his buffalo robe, he was sound asleep. He had feared that he would not awaken as he had planned, but along in the night, something awakened him, the quavering call of a screech owl. He shook his head and blinked his eyes open. He, Thad, was the one that should have been making that call. Could it be a real screech owl calling outside Yellow Cloud's village at this moment? It came again. The boy quickly rolled up his old buffalo robe and got the two bridles from under it. Everything else he needed was hidden in the little cave. He crept, huddled on his haunches, to the edge of the lodge, where he had loosened two of the pegs the night before. His heart was beating like a woodpecker drumming on a tree. Yellow Cloud turned over in his sleep and mumbled something just as Thad was slipping under the edge of the teepee. Thad lay still until heavy breathing inside told him the chief was asleep again. On hands and knees, Thad crawled as fast as he could toward old Buffalo Horn's teepee to signal Melissa. He kept hoping he would not disturb the dogs. He'd gone only a little way when a low growl warned him there would soon be a yammering. He spoke softly to the cur and threw it a piece of pemmican. The dog snatched it, sniffed in Thad's direction, and then slunk back as though satisfied. As the boy neared Buffalo Horn's lodge and was about to give another screech owl's call, he heard it again. It came from the direction of the horse herd and was repeated a minute later. That was Melissa. He knew it. She had beaten him to it. Thad felt a little ashamed, yet it made him feel better. She apparently had the needed courage. Thad got to his feet and broke into a run, heading straight for the horse herd. In the pale light of the stars, he could barely distinguish their outlines. The guard's fire had died down, and he felt sure that the men and boys were asleep. There was nothing to fear from enemies on a night as cold as this, so they had grown careless. Slipping along the edge of the herd, Thad called softly, "Little bit, Bullet, come!" No second call was needed. Two forms broke free of the herd, their hobbles slowing them up. Thad hurried to them, for he was afraid that they would nicker and waken the guards. He crammed some dry grass into their mouths and whispered endearments into their ears. They nuzzled him affectionately. As fast as he could, he slipped the hackamore on Bullet and the bridle on Little Bit. He untied their buckskin hobbles and tied his buffalo robe on the back of Bullet. Then he led the two of them away from the herd. His eyes were accustomed to the darkness, and he tried to find open, sandy stretches which would muffle their hoofbeats. In a little while he saw Melissa, a slender figure against the reflected gleam of the starlight on the creek. He felt easier when he saw her, for he remembered that he should have told her to have the cache of supplies ready for loading. It would have saved time, and time was the important thing now. Time to get far away. Thad handed the reins on the horses to Melissa while he hurried to the hiding place under the willows and took out the provisions. Dividing the jerky, nuts, pemmican, and into equal shares, they tied their bundles on their horses. They led the ponies down the creek under the 3-foot banks till they felt they were out of hearing of the village. Their teeth were chattering with nervous excitement. They mounted, and Thad gave Melissa some whispered instructions. If we hear those Comanches following us, and they seem about to catch up with us," he said, "I'll take off in a different direction and circle around so they will follow me. But you keep going toward the east." "What will become of me if they catch you?" Melissa asked in a worried tone. "You just stay on a little bit and keep going. Don't leave her for a minute. Stay with her even when you let her graze at night. Keep her hobbled and hold onto her rope. It is a long one." Thad had brought a rope for staking each horse while it grazed. But I might lose the way if you are not with me," she said. "I reckon you might, but Little Bit won't. She has escaped from the Comanches 4 times and got home every time. You won't even have to guide her. Just give her her head." There was something else that worried Thad, and he cautioned Melissa about it. "Little Bit's mighty poor, so you'll have to let her graze some every night. Make sure she gets water when she's thirsty, too." A few minutes, they let the horses pick up speed. Thad felt happy and light-hearted, as their preparations for escape were well thought out. They had detailed advice from Sally Buchanan, who knew all there was to know about Comanches. Thad believed. They traveled for an hour at a gallop, stopping now and then to listen for any sound that might indicate they were being followed. It seemed to Thad that Bullet was as eager to get away from Yellow Cloud's village as was Little Bit. They had to be reined down, or they would have galloped at top speed. But Thad did not want them to run themselves out at the beginning. They had a long way to travel. He pulled Bullet to a walk, as the first gray of the coming day could be seen in the east. He listened. No sound reached his ears, save the whisper of the wind in the dry grass. The fugitives nibbled pemmican and jerky while they watered the horses at a small stream and let them graze for an hour. They traveled at a slower speed during the day, stopping at times to listen. At noon, they ate a little and drank at another stream. They traveled until stars came out. With every beat of Bullet's hooves, Thad's heart was saying, "Going home! Going home!" They hobbled their horses and ate a little supper. Thad tied Bullet's rope around his wrist so the horse would not stray. Then they rolled themselves into their robes and lay down in the shelter of a heap of rocks in a little draw. Dead tired, they slept all night without waking. At daybreak, Thad woke to see Melissa rolling out of her robe. "Thad, Thad," she was calling. "They're coming." Thad listened and could hear the faraway drumming of hoofbeats. They caught their ponies and mounted. Thad said, "Here, Lissy, take my share of food. If they catch me, you'll need it, and I won't." They let their horses out to a run, but in less than an hour Thad knew that they were going to be overtaken. "Run for it, Lissy," he shouted. "I'm taking off toward the left." He saw her face as he turned Bullet's head. She was about to cry. He turned to the left and rode hard toward the north. As he pulled away from Lissy, he looked back. Little Bit was running toward the east, putting her whole heart into it. Bullet fought the rain for a minute, then he too settled down to a hard run. After a little, Thad could tell that the Comanches had changed their course to match his. It sounded as though there were 8 or 10 of them. Nothing at that minute could have pleased him more than the knowledge that they were after him instead of Melissa. He was still trying to get away from those yelling devils, but he knew his flight was hopeless. As the dawn spread, he looked back, and there they were at his heels. One of them was swinging a rope, while several others had arrows notched, ready to shoot. There were 9 of them, all young warriors. He drew Bullet to a halt, thinking it wiser to risk being taken alive than shot. There was a chance, Thad believed, that Yellow Cloud or Little Rabbit would keep the village people from harming him. These young braves were yelling like fiends, and when he slowed down, they swarmed about him. Some slapped him with their open hands, with stinging blows. Others beat him over the head with their rawhide ropes. Finally, one swung a doubled rope, bringing it down on Thad's head. He was knocked from his uneasy perch on Bullet's back, and as he hit the ground, everything went black.